In this video, we will show you how to replace your upper transmission cooler line on this Lincoln Navigator. Part of this will be located along the driver's side of your radiator. The rest of it will be underneath the vehicle. Let's get into it. Okay friends, let's get started on our job. Come right over to the passenger side in the engine compartment and remove your transmission dipstick. You want to give that fluid a quick wipe and a quick inspection. Make sure it's still red. If it looks like it's brown or burnt in some way, it's a good idea to make sure you service that transmission fluid. Now at this point, I'll just take this and start putting it back in, but I want to talk about the handle of it. If you were to look along this area, you can see exactly which type of fluid you need to use to refill the transmission fluid, Mercon. Now with that said, we'll leave this right here and make our way over to the driver's side top of the radiator. Now up in this area, you can see exactly where the line goes into the radiator. While you're trying to loosen the line fitting, it's a good idea to make sure you hold onto the fitting that's directly into the radiator as well. To hold that fitting, we'll use a 24mm wrench. Continue on with a 16mm wrench to loosen the line. Keep in mind, fluid might come out of this area. It's a good idea to have a collection bucket under here so you can recycle that fluid properly. Now let's make our way under the vehicle. Now from underneath the vehicle, along the front, you're going to find that you have a skid shield coming across here. On this, you'll find that you have 6 13mm headed bolts to remove. Let's remove all of them. Now that we have that off, we have a clear view of our transmission lines. The line that we will be replacing is the one that goes from the radiator all the way down to the transmission. We're not replacing the one that goes up to the external transmission cooler. To confirm which line you're replacing, just go ahead and grab onto each of them, give them a wiggle, and see which one is loose from the radiator. We'll follow this all the way down to its mounting bracket, located just below the engine crank. Go ahead and separate that line from its mounting bracket. For this, I'll use a pry bar. Carefully get in between and gently pry it up and out of position. Now that we have that line out of place, let's continue on to removing the bracket from the area. To do this, we'll use a 15mm socket. Now let's follow the transmission lines back. Now right along the front differential, you're going to find that you have another clip holding your 2 transmission lines together. Let's pop that out of place. We'll just have a quick look at that clip, set it aside because you will be reusing it. Now let's follow the transmission back and remove the mounting bolt that holds the shields to your cross member. That's going to make it a little bit easier to flex this shield out of the way to gain access to our transmission line. We'll use a 13mm socket to remove this mounting bolt. There's that bolt. Set that aside. Now with that bolt out of there, we have a little bit of movement coming from our heat shield. Now that we have the shield out of the way, we have a nice clear view of the transmission line. Before we use our 16mm wrench to remove this fitting, make sure you put a collection bucket under the area. Now we can grab onto that line, start carefully pulling it down, and try to drain out as much fluid from the line as possible. Now on this application, you can see that our 2 transmission lines cross over each other. To get this line out of here easiest, we're going to cut the transmission line that we are replacing. Do not damage the other transmission line. Let's make sure we have a collection bucket under this area. Now we can reach up in here and start removing the top aspect of the transmission cooler line. There's that side. Now we can grab onto the other end of the transmission line and pull that out of place as well. All right, friends, let's get ready to install our brand new transmission cooler line. You'll notice on both ends, I taped it. That's to prevent any debris from making its way inside the transmission cooler line. Let's start with the end that makes its way all the way down along the passenger side of the transmission. Start carefully sliding this into place, guide it down along as it needs to go. Now let's take the other end and start putting it in position along the driver's side of the radiator. So just gonna have to wiggle it around and push it up in there. Let's make our way back up top, remove the tape from our fitting, and start installing that into the radiator. Now we don't need to make this tight just yet, but we do want to make sure that it lightly threads in there by hand so you're sure it's not cross-threading into position. Okay, we'll leave this loose, make our way back down to the bottom. Now back underneath the vehicle, let's make sure that this is properly placed up and over the power steering box. Your rubber hose is not kinked in any way, making its way towards the passenger side and then straight back towards the oil pan. At this point, the new line should be directly underneath the other transmission cooler line. Let's take that bracket off of the original transmission cooler line there. Just pull it right down. And now we can take this, we're going to put it on the new transmission cooler line first, and then we'll slide it on to the other transmission line as well. At this point, we'll leave this loose so we still have movement from our transmission lines and make our way to the transmission. Let's remove the tape from our fitting. Once you have the tape off of there, go ahead and start that line into place. It's a little bit difficult to reach your fingers up in here, but you do want to make sure that you do not cross-thread it into the fitting on the transmission. Once you have it started on there, use your 16mm wrench and make sure it's nice and tight. All right, so right there feels as though it kind of wanted to bottom out for me. I'm just going to give it a little extra just to make sure it's nice and snug. We do not want to have a leak in this area. Once you're sure that's in place, let's resecure our heat shield. Get this 13mm bolt started in there. Make sure it starts in by hand and then snug it up with your 13mm socket. Continue on to resecuring those two lines together. We'll use this little C-clamp back here. And then we can make our way up here and resecure the lines on their mounting bracket in this area. Double check your handiwork, continue on to your shield. We'll get this into position, start in all 6 of our 13mm headed mounting bolts, and then snug them up. Now we can make our way back up into the engine compartment. On the driver's side of the radiator, let's continue on by tightening that fitting into the radiator. All All right there feels like it bottomed out. Let's just make sure it's nice and snug. Perfect. All right, friends, we're at the point where you're going to want to make sure you start up the vehicle and let it run while on a smooth, level surface. Once it gets up to normal operating temperature, come over to your transmission dipstick. Go ahead and pull it right out of there, give it a quick wipe, make sure it's nice and clean, and put it back down into that transmission dipstick tube. Once you have it down in there for a couple seconds, go ahead and pull it right back up and out of there, and then double check the transmission fluid level. This vehicle right now is not running, but if it was, we would want to have the fluid someplace in between this hatched area right here. Assuming you're a little low, you can just use a funnel right into that dipstick tube and continue adding until you get up to the proper level. Once you're sure it looks good, go ahead and reinstall that transmission dipstick and then take it for a road test. Aside from that, thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.